ongoing conflict there. Wisconsin Congressman Mike Gallagher, House Armed Services Committee member, and a U.S. Marine who served for 7 years in active duty as an intelligence officer. And sir, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
What is your latest consideration as to whether or not this happens, if and when? Let's start there.
Well, yesterday the Secretary testified that they want to wait to confirm certain intelligence surrounding the strike before they act. That's fine. But last year, obviously, the administration said that Assad would pay a heavy price if he did this again. He's done it again, and so I think we have to act, lest we go down the disastrous path of the previous administration of establishing a red line and then failing to enforce it. Now, this administration, beyond the willingness to act, has some key advantages that the previous administration didn't. For one, we're, at least for the time being, stopping the decimation of our own military, which is particularly important if we're going to ask them to do more in Syria. And two, the president seems to have a good relationship with our allies in the region, foremost among them Israel, our closest ally, and the Sunni Arab Gulf states, Saudi Arabia in particular. What's interesting is there's actually a historic alignment between Israel and the Sunni Arab Gulf states, which traditionally don't cooperate. It's an alignment, a de facto alliance built in opposition to the rise of Iran in the region, and our task is to be the leader of that alliance bloc against the Russian-Iranian axis, which also means we don't have to do everything ourselves, well, regardless of what path they choose.
You're making an interesting case. That just jump forward one moment here, because I know you're making the case to go after Assad, but what do you do at the end of 4 or 5 days of bombing? What's the answer then? Because that's the hesitation that people like James Madison are bringing to this debate. Where are you on that?
I completely understand the hesitation, and certainly we should learn key lessons from our experience in Iraq, which is a war that I fought in. Getting rid of Assad, or at least putting pressure on Assad to leave, doesn't mean we then tear down all the state structures of the Syrian regime in the way we de-Baathified the Iraqi military. It should be our policy of preserving as much order and stability as possible. But really, there's a tendency in this debate to frame it between doing nothing and all-out regime change and war on the other hand. I think that's a false choice that masks the multitude of options we have in between. And again, we have allies on the ground.
Go ahead.
Well, you alluded to a tactical strike in the short term, which we have many military options that we can use to do that. And then over the long term, right now we have 2,000 troops on the ground in Syria, if you believe the open source press reporting, working with at least a 60,000 strong Syrian democratic force to seize territory that was once held by ISIS. Now, as we do that, we've also seen Iranian proxies take some of that territory. So we need some clarity with respect to our position in Iran and Syria. The administration's stated position in the region is to push back Iranian influence, but in Syria they're hesitating. We need to develop a joint military plan of action with Israel that involves pushing back aggressively Iran and its practices, particularly Hezbollah.
That could be happening already. Here, as I read the tea leaves, I see you, an inspector, headed for the region that was hit by the suspected chemical attack. That may be there today, maybe tomorrow, but you know, when you and inspectors go in to do the job, you're now delaying this not by days, but possibly by weeks, sir.
Absolutely. Well, in the interim period, if indeed it's going to be delayed, I think that further heightens the importance of Congress acting to authorize or at least debate any potential use of military force in the region. Madison made it clear yesterday that the administration doesn't feel that they need the authority. I disagree. I think that's a misreading of the Constitution, which only gives the executive branch the authority to repel sudden attacks. I also think we've strained the 9/11 AUMF to its breaking point, and Congress needs to do its job and step up and debate these issues. I got an idea. Keep us here over the weekend. God forbid we'd actually have to work over the weekend. I understand that the Senate might have to cancel some tea times. For that, I'm truly sorry, but I can't think of anything more important than considering the use of military force, putting the lives of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine on the line in the process.
Well, here is a quote from James Madison. On a strategic level, he says, how do you keep this from escalating out of control? If you get my drift on that, end quote. That means Iran, that means Israel, that means Russia. You know the stakes here.
Absolutely. Well, I would say we've done nothing and it's drifted out of control. That's the argument that the previous administration made, and I would say the results are suboptimal. One, we got genocide, 500,000 people dead. Two, we got the worst refugee crisis since World War II. Three, we had a terrorist state that was carved out in the heart of the Middle East, to which flocked 30,000 foreign fighters, 6,000 of which had European passports. We have a terrorist diaspora that we're going to be dealing with for a decade as a result. So I merely bring that up to say there are costs to inaction as well.
What do you think of the Russian Navy ships that were moved out of port?
I think that's
are they now setting up in the Eastern Mediterranean to take on us or the Brits or the French? What do you think of that?
To me, it indicates the opposite. I mean, the honest answer is I don't know. But I think as we saw when we struck Russian mercenaries that were threatening our troops, we killed upwards of 200 of them, there was no response from the Russians. We always think that, you know, we have the weaker hand here. Russia has the weaker hand. We haven't even been playing our hand. Our allies have enormous capability they can bring to bear on this fight. The Jordanians have F-16s. We have the USS Donald Cole that has 60 Tomahawk missiles. The USS Porter could reinforce it. We don't have a carrier strike group, but we have naval assets on the USS Iwo Jima that's in the Gulf of Aden. We should be forward positioning more assets like littoral combat ships in the Black Sea to counter the Russian Black Sea fleet as well.
Very interesting. You make a strong case here. I hope you come back, okay, as we watch this day to day and sometimes hour to hour. Mike Gallagher, thank you for your time today, the Republican from Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Sandra?
New details emerging in the case of a missing family. What